I think one of the most thrilling and enjoyable things about playing music is when you get a chance to solo, is improvising, when you get in a room with a band, you don't know what you're going to play and you just go for it. I think that is one of the things that I personally enjoy the most about playing the guitar. Just getting in there, making something up, having a solo, just going for it and sort of just, I guess, seeing what happens without a plan. And I think improvising is something that the majority of guitar players and musicians strive to get better at, sort of have a desire to do. Whether you're a guitarist or a bass player, a drummer, keyboard player, you play horns, woodwinds, whatever it is, I've got 5 tips that I think will really help you regardless of what instrument you play. Now, these aren't the 5 things you need to know to solo, but these are 5 tips that I really think can help any musician at pretty much any stage. All right, tip number 1 is to learn your instrument. As a guitarist, learn our fretboard. Keyboard player, learn the keys. Just learn the instrument that you're playing. Now, I know this might seem incredibly obvious, but it's pretty amazing the amount of guitarists and musicians that I've come across that are really good, but they don't really know their instrument that well. I think it's really easy to get caught in a rut of using the same positions, the same scales in the same places all the time. And it can really add so much more interest to your soloing and so much more enjoyment to your improv if you actually know how to do those things and how to solo and to do those licks in different places all over the guitar. So learning your scales is incredibly important. Learning them not only in one place, but like 3, 4, 5 different places to play the exact same scale. And then once you learn that scale, learning how to link them all together so that you're not sort of using one and then sort of stop, use another, but you can sort of just flow evenly between all these different positions all over the entire guitar or whatever instrument it is. Tip number 2 is to listen and be intentional. At the end of the day, you are most likely a guitar player in a band with a drummer and a bass player, maybe another guitarist, a keyboard player, maybe a horn section, a vocalist, maybe more vocalists. It's not always about you all the time, right? And even when you're soloing, you sort of take the lead for a moment there, but it's really important to be listening to what the rest of the band is doing. Listen to the chords, listen to the arrangement, listen to whereabouts the other guitarist is, if the bass player is high or if they're low. Listen to what's going on in the context of the music. If the band sort of bring it down and take it down and go real quiet, don't just wail, like listen. It's another thing that might seem incredibly obvious, but it's something that I see a lot as well, which is like, oh, time to solo, let's go for it. Kind of zone into what you're doing and sort of block the rest of the world out. But that's sort of not the best way to do it. If the band are building up, you build up with the band. If the band bring it right down, you bring it right down. Like, be aware of what's happening, and also be aware of what's happening in the chords, because you know your scales and you know the fretboard, and that's awesome. But you don't just throw it all in at once. It's like a chef has their ingredients, but they still need to know what to do with each ingredient and how much to put in and when to put it in. It's really, really important. So if the chords are, I don't know, C major, G major, A minor, F major, right? Really simple chord progression in the key of C. You can sort of hit any note in the key of C over any of those chords, but it really does sound a lot better if you're landing on notes that are actually in those chords. For example, you might do a little run in C major and then land on the E over the C chord because that's the 3rd. And then as they go to G, you might just do some sort of bend and go down to the B because that's the 3rd of the G. You get it, right? Actually playing notes that make sense to the chords. So listening and being intentional with your notes, with your dynamics, with your speed, with everything. That is incredibly important. Tip number 3 is to keep it interesting. Mix it up. It's way too easy to sort of get stuck in those ruts of those licks that we know and playing the way that we always do and just doing that over and over and over again. And you've probably all been there where you're soloing and you just sort of feel like, am I doing the same thing that I was just doing for the last 30 seconds? Like, is this even interesting? I think that's something that everyone has struggled with at some point when you're improvising, is like, man, I need to learn something else. So keeping it interesting and mixing it up is really important to making your solos not only feel good, but sound good and to sound interesting. For example, you not only have to mix it up with your licks and mix it up with sort of the positions that you're using, but you can also mix it up with the right hand. You can go from staccato to legato, you can do octaves, you can do double stops, single notes. There's so many different things that you can do to actually mix it up. All right, number 4 is sort of the opposite of number 3, which is repeat yourself. Now, this might sound strange considering what I just spoke about, but repeating yourself is a way to kind of maintain interest and to sort of make your solos more melodic. What I mean by this is you might do a lick, a simple lick that sounds really cool, right? Maybe do it again. Do the same lick again, and then do some fast thing or do a variation of that lick, do something different, and then come back to that lick that you did. Create interest. Think about the way that a vocalist sings, a way that a melody is written. It's not just a bunch of notes sort of randomly scattered throughout the song. There's hooks, you know, there's melodies, there's interesting things that the listener can kind of grab onto and go, oh, I think I've heard that before. And that's actually really cool. That's something I like to do when I'm soloing. If I'm thinking right and I'm, you know, if I'm focused, is do a little lick, do it again, do a variation on it, do something fast, come back and do that lick again. I just really feel like it adds a cool element to your improvising, so give that a go. All right, tip number 5 is a little different to the others, a little left of field maybe, but bear with me. It's tell a story. Music really in general it's a form of storytelling. Whether you're listening to the lyrics, you're listening to the melody, you're listening to the dynamic of the band, in some way or another, it's storytelling. And when you get to solo, it's sort of your chance to be the dialogue, you know? It's your chance to go, okay, where am I gonna take this story? And now if you think of a story, you think of a movie, let's think about the original Star Wars film. Imagine if that movie started with the destruction of the Death Star. Spoilers, by the way. But if it started with that and then the entire film was just the destruction of the Death Star and then the destruction of the Death Star over and over and over again, the third act, you know, it would be a terrible movie. I think the same thing goes for our soloing. If you sort of go, you know, you're sitting back, you're playing some rhythm, the vocalist is doing the second chorus or whatever, and then it's, okay, it's time for a solo. You don't just go straight to, you know, your best thing, your fastest thing, to that third act, that last battle. You don't go straight there, straight away, right? You want to sort of build into it. And I think that is a really important thing to think about when you're soloing. Just because you've got 30 seconds to solo doesn't mean that you need to do everything that you can do the entire time, or even at all. You know, start simple, start slow, leave gaps, leave some space, just hit a note, hit another note, bend another note, start to slowly speed up, you know, start to sort of, you know, eye the drummer up and sort of hit harder, and any good drummer will start to sort of follow you. Whatever the context is, think about it as a beginning, a middle, and an end. Start somewhere and take the audience, take the listener to the end, right? Bonus tip, tip number 6. I sort of spoke on it in some of the other tips, but let me explain. Tip 6 is to be the vocalist. Now, you're not actually the vocalist, but if you think about a song, there's pretty much singing throughout the majority of it. Maybe an intro, a couple of instrumentals, but predominantly there's singing going through the whole thing. So when it's time for the guitar solo or the instrumental break or whatever it is, it's kind of cool to channel the vocals, sort of channel a vocalist into your playing. One of my favorite guitarists, Matthias Asado, has a really cool, very interesting, very unique style. He often gets asked about sort of where he developed his style from. And he talks about Tori Kelly's sort of vocal lines that she sings and the way that she sings, and he sort of developed that into his guitar playing. He's got a really, really cool sound. If you haven't checked him out, you got to check him out. He's incredible. But I think part of the reason he's so good is because he's channeling that of a vocalist. And one of the ways that I sort of think it's important is a vocalist doesn't just sing constantly throughout the entire song and even throughout an entire line. There's gaps in the words, there's phrases, there's breaths. And I think that's a really cool thing to try and transfer onto your instrument. If you think about a flute solo, you know, there's breaths. There has to be breaths. They can't just play for a minute or 2 minutes consistently. So I think the same thing for guitar and for bass and for keys is actually really important. Take some breaths, because it's so easy to just solo and solo and solo and just go for it and just keep going and to just never stop. But I sort of think that's not as interesting and that's not as sort of captivating as taking some breaths, doing some licks, taking a second, listening to the band, coming in again. Like, channel the singer into your guitar playing, into your keyboard playing, whatever it is. Think as a vocalist. All right, those are my 5 tips, plus an extra one to better soloing, to kind of spice up your improvisation, to kind of get more out of your instrument and get more out of your solo break or whatever it is. I really hope that they helped. There are so many more things that you can do to make your guitar playing, your piano playing, your soloing, your improvisation better. But these are just a couple of things that I think might be helpful. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you spending the time to check this out. Share it, like and subscribe, do the bell, all those things. But mainly if you've got musician friends that you think might benefit from this, please share it with them. I'm not making this video for any other reason than to help people. These are things that I tell my students on a regular basis, and I thought they might be helpful for you. Enjoy the rest of your night, your day, your morning, your week, whatever it is. Have a go at sort of adapting some of these tips and these tricks to your soloing, see if it helps. Please let me know if it did help. It'll be really cool to hear your feedback. Yeah, peace out.